This episode of the Adventure Jogger is brought to you by John Goldfield, Trail Mayor Hates Honeysuckle, Dave Pond, and Caroline Troop, and the rest of the folks supporting on Patreon. Join us over there, and you, the wonderful listener. The Adventure Jogger, a podcast about trail and ultra running. Meet fascinating runners from the front, middle, and back of the pack, sharing inspiring and funny stories about life and running. Running should be fun, and so should running podcasts. I'm your host, Stephen Kornhaus, and this is the Adventure Jogger. Well, today on the Adventure Jogger, I have got a guest who is no stranger to the Adventure Jogger. I think we decided this was his seventh appearance on the Adventure Jogger, the seventh of probably many more to go. But again, we're really excited to have Hunter Leininger back on the Adventure Jogger. So welcome, Hunter, back.
Thank you. It's amazing. It's like a monthly occurrence now. I just keep coming back and chatting with you, Stephen. It's great to talk to Ryan in the past, and now it's like I get to catch up with you. So I'm very grateful to be here again.
Yeah, it's great to have you, man. And we talked all about a lot of the stuff in the previous episode, which wasn't even, I don't even know if it was a month ago now. It's been pretty recent. Yeah. But I wanted to have you back on because you just finished the Ultra Gobi race, which is 400 kilometers, and had sounds like some pretty amazing stories and experiences that we need to dive into.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to the race where I have no stories to tell and I'm like, yeah, it was good. It was a good 200-mile run. Nothing went wrong. It was perfect. Yep, I finished it. But I seem to come on here and we always have some crazy stories to tell. Things going wrong, things going right. But at the end of my life, I'm pretty sure I'll look back on these experiences a lot more grateful and fulfilled to have all these crazy stories compared to just, I just ran a marathon. It was a great day.
Right. It's certainly not a boring race. You always have some adventures.
No, exactly.
Well, tell us all about the Ultra Gobi. Like, give us the stats, where it's at. Give us the breakdown of the race.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So they reached out to me like 6 months ago. It was a race in China, so it's called the Ultra Gobi 400K, 400 kilometers, which is 250 miles for us Americans. But it's China's like most prestigious, toughest race there is. But it went on from like 2015 up until 2019. And they had like Harvey Lewis was out there, Mike Wardy, and some big name runners went out there. But they discontinued it in 2020, and they finally brought it back this year. And it was like such a big deal that this race was happening again. They invited me, and I was like, sure, I don't even know what the race is. I did no research about it. That's kind of like how messed up I am. I was like, yeah, I'll just do it. Yeah, so that sounds fun. I don't even know where it is in China. I don't know what the rules are. But the week before, basically, I started doing research about the race and like really planning out everything because I finished the Iceland Traverse, that big FKT, and then I went out and helped my friend Tara on the Appalachian Trail. And then like 3 days later, I had to leave for China. So I'm doing all this research about the race. And it's basically a self-supported race. I tend to think of it as like a self-supported FKT because they allow me to have drop bags at the aid stations, but the aid stations, they don't give you anything besides water. There's no food. There's no aid station. There's no crew. And also the whole course is unmarked. So you get a GPS tracker at the beginning that has 40 checkpoints that you have to navigate to.
Oh, wow.
And that makes the 400 kilometers. So some people take shortcuts that they think it's faster going across the sand dunes, and some people run longer around the road. So it's a really like create your own adventure. You're all alone. You're navigating by yourself. You have no crew. You have to carry a bigger backpack with a lot of mandatory gear, such as like a sleeping bag and a bunch of survival stuff, just because you're going up in these high mountains that snow and it's freezing. And then you're down in the low desert that it's like 90 degrees, super hot. So it's a total wilderness race. It's not so much about who's the fastest and put the head down, but it's like, all right, who could survive all these elements and still make it to the finish?
So it sounds like your experience adventure racing and also doing the Iceland FKT and other FKTs really paid off here, because if you're carrying all your stuff, I mean, that's probably pretty similar to the gear you were carrying, maybe not as much for the Iceland FKT.
Yeah, honestly, when I started doing research about the race, I thought it was completely unsupported. So I'm like, oh, man, Iceland's going to be perfect training. Like I was carrying a 45-pound pack in Iceland and still running about 100 kilometers a day, carrying all my own food and gear. So I thought this race was kind of the same thing. But the week before, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's actually self-supported, so I can carry like a somewhat smaller pack. But
Nice.
from the outside, like if you're not used to doing FKTs and carrying big backpacks, like it was still like 10 pounds. That's still a lot for most people.
Yeah.
But for me coming off of doing something for 45 pounds, I was like, oh, this is like a little day pack. Like I feel so good. I was so happy about it. But I
Right.
truly think like this race, I can't wait to go back when I'm healthy because it has a lot of things that cater to my strengths. So like the navigation, that's adventure racing, the self-supported aspect. That's what adventure racing and the FKTs I've been doing is like just all alone, taking care of
Right.
yourself, not worrying about crew and pacers and stuff like that. Um, and I think just the elements of like how tough the train was is it really combines all the things I love about ultra running and FKTs and adventure racing into one race. So I can't say enough great things about the race.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's right up your wheelhouse. And so you said 40 checkpoints. Now, are these checkpoints similar to adventure racing where you have to go and like punch something into your bib so they know you were there? Or is there some way that they're checking to make sure every runner is going to all the checkpoints?
Yeah. And I could touch on how big of a production this race was. Like, I don't know. Going into this, I kind of just had an open mind of like, oh, is this just a little race in China? But this is like the biggest deal in China. Like, it was the biggest, best race I've ever been to, a production level. Like, there was 500 volunteers, but there was only 50
Wow.
runners. 50
Oh my
runners.
goodness.
It was insane. So then it's just such a big production. So each of those checkpoints, I thought it was just gonna be like adventure race, like a flag hanging up, and you come in and you
Right.
punch it so you people know where you are. But you come in and it's like there's like 10 cars parked there, and they'll give you water at every single one of those drop stations and cheering you on. There's all this media crews and like photographers, and it's like such a big production for this little race that there's only 50 runners doing it. It was
Wow.
crazy. So yes, all the checkpoints, it was basically just a water fill up with a dude with this a table with the big sign and people cheering you on. It was crazy.
Now, if there's only 50 runners in the race, do you have to get like an invite to do this, or is this something people can register for?
Yeah, so you can register for it, but it's very selective crowd. I think 400 people signed up for it. I might be wrong about that number, but it was a lot, and they only
Wow.
accept 50 runners. So they're very really strict on it. It's mostly Chinese runners. There was about 15 international runners that showed up. And like I was invited there to come do it, but everybody else, yeah, you could pay online and sign up and do it. But it's very
Wow.
exclusive. Like they don't want this to be a big race. I was talking to the race director afterwards. I'm like, my gosh, like I'm so excited about how great your race was. Like I can't wait to tell everybody about it and promote. And I get 20 of my friends to show up and sign up next year. They'll be so excited. They're like, no, we actually just want to keep it like 50 runners. We don't want this to be
Wow.
500 plus people.
Right. They don't want to turn into like a UTMB where there's, 2,000 people and just nonsense. So that's really cool. I
Yeah.
mean, those smaller,
Yeah.
more intimate races, especially with that level of volunteers, I mean, that's awesome. That's had to have been the best supported race.
Yeah. You feel like a celebrity going into every single checkpoint. It's crazy. It's like you had 10 people to help you and like work on you. Yes, it's self supported, so they don't give you anything. But like the Chinese people are so nice that like I would bend down to like untie my shoe, and there would be like three people jump on my shoe and untie it before I bent down and pick it off. And it's like that level of support, man. I wish we had that at every single ultra here in the US, but we have hundreds of runners here and not just 50.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. That's way different than I would have thought it would have been, honestly. Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that. I didn't know it was so small either. I thought there was probably 250, 300 runners, but wow, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
So you mentioned you had to carry a lot of gear because, you went up high in the mountains where it snowed. So I'm curious, like what was the lowest altitude and then the highest altitude, if you know?
Yeah, I do know. I'm just trying to exact numbers, but it was pretty high altitude race in a sense. So you started out in the like low desert, it's like sand dunes and super hot, but it was still like 6,000 feet. So it's
Oh,
still
okay. So a
the
lot like
upper
Colorado.
East Coast here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just super hot. Like the first day, it was it's direct sunlight the whole time. There's no
Yeah.
trees, there's no protection. So you're just running for 400 kilometers, completely exposed. And at the beginning, down below, it was like 90 degrees. So everybody's like overheating, getting dehydrated. And then as you progress in the course, you get up to about 11,000 foot mountains.
Oh,
And it's
cool.
crazy that all the mountains surrounding you are like 16, 17,000 feet. Some of them are 19,000 feet, all
Oh
just
my
around you.
gosh.
Like they're like unnamed mountains, but they're bigger than anything we have in the US. And you're just like
Wow.
riding right through these big valleys where it's like freezing cold. It got below freezing, definitely. Don't know the exact number.
Yeah.
It was probably in the 20s. And so that was a big shift where people were like pushed really hard the first day, exert themselves in the heat, and then were like kind of fall behind in nutrition and hydration. Then they get up in the mountains, they don't have enough body heat to keep themselves warm in the freezing cold mountains.
Gosh.
It was a while.
Yeah, that's pretty that's a big change from 6,000 to 11,000. Was it were there climbs like a European race where you're going, 4,000-foot climb and one ascent, or was it more broken up?
It was probably the flattest race I've ever done in a sense
Oh
of
wow.
like,
Okay.
yeah, like elevation gain wasn't a lot, but it was basically you're just like gradually climbing over 60 miles to gain the
Okay.
elevation. So you're like
Interesting.
barely notice it. But the terrain, there was a lot of like dirt roads that just nonstop up and down. So like elevation gain wise, it's not much. I compare a lot to like Iceland. The Iceland Traverse, I think I only had 35,000 feet of gain over the whole thing.
Yeah.
It was that, yes, it's not big climbs, but it's just constantly just up and down on dirt roads, which you're losing 20 feet, you're gaining 20 feet. So it doesn't
Yeah.
look like impressive, but terrain wise, it was pretty tough. But this China race, it was, yeah, the course is really unique because it had like a great mix of fast moving terrain, but then had some slower, like sandy, like the sand dunes. You can't move that fast there. But it
Right.
had actually some pavement incorporated in it, which I didn't know beforehand. So, like, going to the race again, if I do it next year or following or whatever, it's like, yeah, a lot different strategies would help.
Well, now you know. Yeah. So you said there
And I
wasn't
know.
much elevation gain, but what do you know what it was over the whole 250 miles? Rough
No,
estimate?
I, I don't know, but I think it was like something like 17,000 feet a game.
Oh,
So,
wow. Yeah, that is pretty
yeah,
flat for
not
that
much.
many miles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, that's cool. Well, I guess
Yeah.
take us through the start of the race, or maybe even like the day before the race. Like, do they put you up in like a group hotel and you stay there and have like a dinner or something, or kind of how's that go?
Yeah, it's the full production, and like I'm the type of guy that's like I just want to show up to a race and just like put on my bib and just like start immediately. But it's like you show up to this race and it's such a big production. Like I said, it's China's most prestigious race ever. So like there's 3 day they fly us up like 3 days before and put us up in a hotel, like a really nice hotel, and they do like press conference and then like meet and greet and then three dinner like celebrations before the race, and then we have like all this like check-in stuff. And it's like really, really crazy how much like effort they put into everything. They gave us like two suitcases full of just all this like merchandise. And like so
Oh my
I really
gosh.
went with like so many souvenirs and so many different things, like big bottles of whiskey, like it was a full production. So
Oh,
like the 3 days before was pretty exhausting. Just like doing everything and like meeting everybody. It was like such an amazing experience. But it was like, hi, ready just to race and just be alone for 2 days or
right.
3 days or 4 days, whatever it is. But yeah, so the 3 days before was a lot of just doing the pre-race stuff, and then we drove, I think, like 3 hours into the desert, into the Gobi Desert, and then we started the race from there.
Okay. So what time did the race start?
It started at Yeah, that's another thing. We woke up super early and we got bused to start, but it was such a big production this race that like the pre-race ceremony took like 3 hours of like, all right, everything from house here, and then we gotta run through this like old palace or something with arches, and everybody's gonna celebrate. There's like 50 media people taking pictures and video, and you come through and everyone's
Wow.
hearing your name, and then it's like, all right, one person at a time. Like all 50 riders were called up and during this like ceremony thing. And that's the cool thing about this like tight knit, like small group race. This could never
Right.
happen at UTMB. But like a
Oh
race
no,
like
it's
this is like, they're pulling at every single athlete, saying your name, what country you're from, your age, like your background, like all these cool things. And then, all right, you did that ceremony. Now you got to do another ceremony. You got to get on a horse and you ride a horse through the village to the start line, and then
that's
you do that,
crazy.
and then they hand you something I've never done in a race or seen, was they hand you half of the finisher medal, basically. And it's like this like like a metal
Like a puzzle piece, kind of.
figurine or something. And it's
Okay,
you get the first half at the beginning of the race, and if you finish, you get the other half that makes it a complete full. That
interesting.
was a cool experience. So it was like, again, like 3 hours of doing all this like ceremony thing, doing media. It was like a
Right.
really cool experience. Like everybody was getting so hyped for the race. And then we eventually start the race. And I got the warning from who told me this? I think Harvey Lewis told me this, but he was like, just so you know, like the Chinese runners, like they go out really fast at the beginning. Don't get like intimidated by people's pace and just go at your own pace and just settle
Yeah.
in. Because by night one, you'll be passing all these people that pushed super hard the first day and blew up. And that was the
Oh
case. It's
wow.
like it's like I've never seen people go out so fast in a 250 mile race. These people are dropping like 5 minute paces, just full
Oh my gosh.
sprinting. It was crazy. And I'm just like, I'm just settling in my pace. Um, and one of the coolest things was, again, this race is unmarked. There's no markings in the course. You don't have to follow a certain path. You can navigate wherever you think is the fastest. So I looked
Okay.
like the morning of the race. I should have done a lot more research before this race, but I've been busy, so I haven't fully focused on this one. But I looked basically the bus ride to the start line. I'm like, I think there's a better way to go the first checkpoint, the first like 20, I think 20 kilometers or so. I was like, they have a recommended route. So there's the 40 checkpoints, but they have a recommended route that the race director thinks is the best way you should go.
Okay.
But you have the ability to choose whatever route you want. And I looked at that. I'm like, I don't think that's the best way. I think right from the start, going right instead of going left is the best way. So we start going, and all these people are running really fast, and I'm up in the lead, whatever, the first 10 people, whatever. And I'm the first one or the only one to go right.
To
All of
go
a sudden, like
right.
there's all these drones and media following everybody. And then it's like this whole crowd of people going left. And there's just Hunter, just all by himself, like, all alone. And I'm like, that's just my background as an adventurer. So like I have the confidence in myself. Like what I just got to commit to what this route is. Just because I see all these other people not following me, it's like just got to keep going. So I ran and I looked back and there's like nobody behind me. And then all of a sudden I see is like some of the runners from the big crowd seeing me and be like, huh, Hunter's going that way. I'm going to just follow him. Because I get that reputation going into this race of like, Hunter's the adventure racer. He knows how to navigate really well. Like he's going to come up with some crazy strategies and stuff. So people just like along with me. And so three other runners followed me on that route, and it ended up being faster and easier terrain. Like we ran on pavement for 20
Oh
kilometers
wow.
instead of through the sand dunes for 20 kilometers. So
Oh
I
heck
was like
yeah.
nice and relaxed at the beginning. Those three runners were like still sprinting. They sprinted past me, running like a 6 minute pace on the road. I'm like, nope, that's not how I'm racing right
That's
now.
crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So I mean, this is not a stage race. So you are running all 250 miles as fast as you can. There's not like 80 kilometers the first day and 100 kilometers the next day. So how did that whole first day go? Like just other than the start and the only one going to the right, I mean, what did the rest of that day look like?
Yeah, and that's something to touch on. Like when I tell people I race in the Gobi Desert, they're like, "Oh yeah, you did that Gobi March like stage race," and that's
Right.
what people know it's up in Mongolia. But this race was completely nonstop. It was like there's no set sleeping spots. You don't have to stop for a certain time. It's like, all right, you start and just make it to the 250 miles, just like we have here in the States.
Right.
But so, yeah, my mindset going into it was I had the confidence in my body and my legs. Like 250 miles doesn't scare me. Like I've done like the Iceland Traverse 370 miles, um, and other things I've done. So my mindset was like, I'm going to take it nice and easy the first day. Just stay conservative and go fast for the second half. And that's kind of how
Right.
FKTs, it's always like be conservative the second half. And then once you kind of can see the finish line, even if it's 150 miles out, like that's when you start putting the hammer down and start pushing.
Yeah.
Where the traditional mindset that most people have with these distances is I feel like they just don't have the confidence in themselves that they basically think, oh, we get a bank time the first half and
Yeah.
then just hold on for the second half. So that was the
Right.
strategy I kept seeing happen, even with the top runners, was like people were going out way too fast at the beginning. like I'm sitting in like 20th place, and I'm still feel like I'm pushing myself faster than I should be pushing. Um,
Yeah.
but it was pretty quickly after the first like 12 hours of super hot exposed sun through the like the big sand dunes, some tough terrain. But I'm like going casually, comfortable pace, and I'm slowly like picking off runners. But again, my mindset is I'm not racing this at all. I'm coming into this race with the FKT mindset. Like I'm the only one out here. I'm not like basing my strategy off of anybody else.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people were everybody else there was racing. It was like they see, all right, Hunter's running this part. I'm gonna start running this part. He's walking. It's like I was coming from the FKT background. I was like, I'm just all alone out here.
Yeah. So what the rest of the day looked like then? I mean, you did that first 20 kilometers to the checkpoint on pavement. And then from there, were you in the desert? Were you on the sand dunes or what was it like?
Yeah, so you shot across, and then you got basically in the big sand dunes. And it's like if you look at my Instagram, the best pictures is just these big sand dunes, some loose sand, some deep loose sand. And it was cool because you could see like 10 kilometers ahead. So you can kind of see the whole train of runners going up these sand dunes. So you kind of knew
Oh,
your
wow.
positioning and everything. But again, I was like, I have my head down. Like, this is so early in the race. This race doesn't begin until like mile 200, basically, in my eyes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Especially with like the warning I got of like these international racers, like they go out so fast and then it's like they kind of blow up because not many people are used to the distance in a sense. Uh,
Right.
so that's what I saw where the first full day I realized something was off about me, but didn't really realize until way later. But like my heart rate was just so much higher than I normally would run. And I was like going
Interesting.
at a pretty comfortable pace and I was talking the whole time. But for some reason, like I would look down and my heart rate would be like 180 beats. I'm like, what's
Oh,
going
wow.
on? So something was off, but I didn't really think too much of it. And body wise, my legs felt great. Everything was, I was no stomach issues. I was eating really good. I don't get sleepy. Um, and as we go into the first night, I'm just like going at my own pace and we start doing the bigger climbs up towards the bigger mountains. And I come into a rest area. I think this is about mile 60 ish. And all of a sudden I come in and I see that like the top three runners just sitting there like sleeping. And I'm like,
Huh.
you guys are sleeping the first night. That's interesting. Okay. And, again, my strategy going into this race was to never like stop moving and just be like super efficient with the with the rest area stops with my drop bag and everything, and kind of just grab stuff and just keep moving. Never like sit down and do stuff. Even for 250 miles, I don't need to take a break in a sense. But I came into that one. I'm like, man, the top three runners are right here. The first place guys like a few miles ahead, but second, third, and fourth place are sitting right here. That means I'm in fifth place right now. What's going on? And then I'm like,
Right.
I feel like I was playing very conservative at that point. So I'd quickly transition and I'd leave, and it kind of like ripped them up. They're like, holy crap, Hunter just came in and left within like 2 minutes. So we need to get going. So they transitioned really fast and they ran and caught up with me. And we ran that first night kind of together. And it was interesting to see like the race strategy. Again, I'm not super, I don't have a lot of experience doing ultras. I do kind of my own adventures and adventure
Right.
racing where I'm not used to the race environment of like people basing strategies off of each other. So I'm just like, yeah, I'm just focusing on my own pace and my own time. And also in my back of my head, I was going for the course record. So I'm like, if these people are going to break the course record too, great. I have to worry about them down the road. But in my head, I'm like, I'm just going to put my head down and race. But these other runners were like kind of basing their strategy off of me. Like I would come into one of the checkpoints and like quickly just fill up the water and leave. And they would like come in before me and like sit down and like take a break. And they were like, oh,
Yeah.
Hunter's leaving. All right, I got to get my stuff and leave. I'm like, what are you racing right now the first night? We still have 200 miles left.
It's like run your own race, bro. It's like
Yeah, yeah. It was funny. So,
Wow.
we went through that first night, kind of going back and forth with that second, third, and fourth place person. And I felt super conservative. The sun came up, and I was actually like broke off from Brian and Benny, who was the other American and South African guy. I
Okay.
started running with the Chinese runner who was in second place, and it was pretty fun. racing internationally because this Chinese runner, his name is Iceman or Ice Goo, and he doesn't speak any English at all. But like we ran together for like 50 miles and we would just like communicate by like grunting and pointing and like it was really interesting just to experience a
Yeah.
race, like try to like navigate with somebody and be like, it's over here. Yeah, over here. Come on,
Yeah,
this way. Like,
yeah.
it was kind of cool because again, coming into the race, like people knew I was the adventure racer with the navigation experience. So, like anytime I would catch up with somebody, they would like not even pull out the map and not navigate at all. Like the
Just
Iceman
letting you do the
guy,
work.
Iceman for 50 miles, he never pulled out his map. He was just like, I'm just gonna follow you, Hunter. And I would navigate for him. So I was pretty interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny how that mindset. It's people just, I guess, like you said, they're used to that racing where they're gonna follow somebody and do what the other people are doing and try to hang on, where you're just kind of doing your own thing, which is probably a lot better and a lot smarter to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what kind of food did you take? Because you said like they don't give you food, so you had to bring all of your own like nutrition. So what was your kind of nutrition strategy for this whole thing?
Yeah, it was interesting because going into the Iceland traverse, the difference was I had to carry all my own food and gear for the entire 370 miles. I had no
Right.
resupply points. So I was really meticulous about researching and testing like the lightest food possible. So I can share with you, but I had this like crazy spreadsheet with like 1,000 plus hiking and running
Yeah.
foods, breaking down every single calorie to ounce to figure out what's actually like the most calorie dense things ever. Because every ounce mattered on that. Because
Oh yeah.
6 days worth of food, if I average 150 calories per ounce compared to 120 calories per ounce, instead of it was basically I ended up with 15 pounds of food instead of 22 pounds of food. So it's a big
Yeah.
difference with all that research. Where this one, I had the luxury of like, it was only about 50 kilometers between each drop bag. So I
Okay.
could 50 kilometers of food isn't that much weight. So I wasn't really
No.
fixated on like what's the heaviest and everything. So it's a lot of just junk food, honestly. Like I need to do a better job maybe with my nutrition, but it seems to be working. And I make, of course, the funny videos of me eating butter and
Right.
ranch and
I was
mayo.
gonna say, like, since this was in the desert, what did you do to keep that butter from melting?
I put in my hydration bladder so it's just more liquid so I can just drink it. That's
There you
the
go.
top tip right there.
Squirt the ranch in there too, and you're good to
Oh,
go.
just gotta mix it all up. Don't ever clean out your bladder. Once there's butter in there, just pour more ranch and then just yeah, it
Exactly.
mixes.
Good
Great.
to go. Good to go. So yeah, you got to have a lot of the junk foods and foods that you really liked and weren't too concerned about, the weight and all of that since it's only a 50K.
Yeah.
Um, so the first day you mentioned that like your heart rate was really high already. Was that kind of the only issue you had through day one was just kind of the higher heart rate, or did any other issues kind of start to creep up?
Yeah, it was the first 100 miles, like, I had no issues, like, my body felt great, my legs felt strong, I had no blisters, I never even stopped to take a break, I was, like, kind of fast in the transitions, the only issue was really, like, the weird heart rate, but I never felt like I was tired, I was still talking perfectly fine, there wasn't any sign of, like, the heart rate was meaning anything. I honestly chopped it up to like, oh, I think my watch is just off and it's just not tracking right. Maybe it's dirty
Yeah.
or something. So I didn't think anything of it. So I get to the 100-mile mark and I'm basically tied for first place. We come in, Iceman and I, the Chinese runner and I come in, and the first place guy is a guy from Nepal, Sherpa, and he was in the aid station basically the same time. So we're all three tied there at the 100-mile mark, right at 24 hours, which 100
Okay.
miles in 24 hours is a pretty good pace for this race. Like that was way faster than the
Yeah.
previous years. But I was feeling pretty confident at that point because I was like, my body feels good. I haven't had to take any ibuprofen. I haven't had to put any like Tiger Balm or anything in my legs. Like my body feels good. I'm not sleepy at all. I'm not out of like breath. I felt comfortable. So I had a lot of confidence. Again, my strategy was going to be take this first 100 pretty easy and then really throw down the hammer at basically the 150-mile mark. So I was going to take
Okay.
the middle 50 miles easy still. at the pace I'm going at right now, and then really just like try to blow up and just try to push really hard the last 100.
Yeah.
And and that was the first time I kind of started racing a little bit of like in that mindset of looking around and being like, I don't think these other runners are having that same strategy. I think like Iceman here, he's pushing really hard this first 100 with the mindset of banking time and going slower in the second half. Um,
Yeah, just hanging on.
yeah, so I had some confidence going into that, come into the rest area, and they're called rest areas because it's not really aid stations. Because they have like sleeping cots and everything, but that's it.
Yeah.
Drop bags and sleeping cots. And I come in and I do a super quick transition, like maybe 3 minutes. And Iceman decides to lay down and sleep for like 30 minutes or so. So I take
Okay.
off. I'm feeling good. We're leaving this town basically. And it was just like all of a sudden I get hit like really hard with like severe breathing issues. Like I call on my mom and I'm like, I can't breathe like right now. Like I'm hyperventilating,
Oh,
going at
wow.
like a very slow pace. Like I'm walking through town on pavement and I'm like huffing and puffing and wheezing. And I'm like, what's going on? And it was just so odd. So I take out my inhaler out of my backpack and so I've had asthma my whole life. Ever since I was born, I was like hospitalized when I was born for like 6 weeks because my breathing was so bad and I had such low lung capacity. So
Oh,
I've had
wow.
asthma my whole life and I've been taking an inhaler every single day forever, but it hasn't really hindered my racing at all. Like even doing
Yeah.
crazy high mountaineering mountains, like I don't have breathing issues. But even though like
Interesting.
I get tested like 3 years ago, I think I got tested, and the doctor said I was breathing about 40% capacity compared to everybody else.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it's really odd that like I've been able to have this breathing issue, but still perform the same way.
Right. Yeah.
Um, I never had like scary incidents of like asthma attacks during a race or even really needing to use this emergency inhaler, but I always carry it just in case. So I pour out the inhaler and I do it. And it's like, usually that gives you like instant relief, but it
Yeah.
did not change anything about it. I'm still like wheezing and like not talk. Um, and I'm like, still just moving forward. My mom's like, you need to stop and just sit down. I'm like, I could see first place. He's like 5 minutes ahead of me. And third place is right here. Like, I'm still racing this. So I'm just like, I'm gonna take it easy. I'm just gonna go nice and slow. And I'm just walking, um, I swear, like 1 kilometer per hour. And I'm
Yeah.
still like hyperventilating. My heart rate
Wow.
was very low, but it was just like I could not catch my breath ever. And like I was trying to stay meditating. Like I know my mind wasn't going crazy or I was overreacting about anything, so it wasn't that. I was like very calm. It was just breathing like crazy. So I actually called up the race director and I was like, "Hey, I just want to give you a heads up. My situation. I'm coming into the next checkpoint, and just a heads up, just in case something does happen to me and my tracker stops moving, come rescue me." uh,
Oh, wow.
that, so that kind of freaked her out a little bit. So
Yeah.
she's like, I'm calling an ambulance. I don't care, Hunter. I'm calling an ambulance. I'm like, no, don't. If you call an ambulance and some like, does that penalize me or do I get pulled out of the race or something? She's like, no, no. Like we've done that for other racers. Like we'll call an ambulance to come just check your vitals and make sure
Good grief.
things not on. So I'm like, "Gosh, okay, I'm gonna keep walking though." So I'm walking so slowly. And it's so weird. Like I walked on the road for like probably 2 hours. And still like the third place guy hasn't caught me yet. I'm like, what's
Oh,
going on?
wow.
Like, so he finally catches me and he's like, what's going on? But he was struggling just as much. Like he was hitting a sink or two, but I think it was just because like legs wise or something else.
Yeah.
But so he catches up with me as soon as the ambulance pulls up. And the ambulance pulls up, I hop inside and he's like, what's going on? Like, good luck. And he keeps going. So I hop in the ambulance and they do all these vital tests and they hook me up to oxygen and nothing comes back. It was like, your heart rate's good, your blood pressure's good, your oxygen level's good. Like they did the finger thing where they
Yeah.
check how much oxygen and nothing came back messed up. But I was still
So weird.
like could not breathe and I was wheezing like crazy at this point. They hooked me up oxygen and they're like, just sit here for 20 minutes. I'm like, okay, I'll sit here. And then 20 minutes comes up and I'm like, my breathing's still really bad. So they made me sit there for like an hour. They're calling up all
Wow.
these people are like, what do we do? They're like, it's up to Hunter. Whatever he decides, it's him. Like, so I'm like, I'm not dropping out of this race. No, I'm going to keep racing. Still, I cannot breathe at all. And now, like, I start getting super nauseous and like stomach hurting and my head's like, I feel like I'm blacking out.
Oh my
But
goodness.
I was still so much in race mode at that point. I was like, I could still keep moving. Like, I'm not going to run with feeling this that I'm going to die, but I
Yeah.
just walk. I can walk casually the next marathon until the next rest area. So they eventually are like, Hunter, it's up to you. We can either take you back to the rest area or take you to the hospital. We wouldn't recommend it, but you can continue going if you feel up to it. I'm like, I think I feel good. I'm at least going to try. Let me at least go a few miles down the road to the next checkpoint and then see from there. Because I didn't want to give up
Yeah.
on myself. Like I was like, everything feels so good. My body feels good. My legs feel fresh, no blisters. Nutrition's good. Like I don't want to quit on myself. So I got out of the ambulance, got my backpack on, and within like 10 steps of leaving the ambulance, I started getting like super lightheaded and I started throwing up a bunch of
Oh my.
crap.
Oh
And I'm like,
gosh.
so I'm like out of breath, like throwing up, like out of breath. And they're like, Hunter, no, sorry, man, we're gonna call it for you. Get in the ambulance. You're done, dude. Sorry, like we can't let you keep going. And I'm like,
Oh no.
I agreed. I'm like, yeah, this is stupid. I cannot continue, and I can't like put the race in jeopardy. I can't put my health in jeopardy. Like
Right.
I'm good. Race is done. I get loaded back in the ambulance. I stuck my watch. I like call my mom. I'm like, yep, so much for like trying to walk again. Like I threw up everything. I almost blacked out. Like my race is done. So they're like, Hunter,
Yeah.
we could take you to the hospital or we could take you back to the rest area where you could rest and then decide if you want to go to the hospital or not. So I'm like, no, no, no hospital. I'll be good. So they take me back to the rest area. I get there. They're like, Hunter, lay down and rest for as many hours you want, like sleep. And then we'll have some doctors come in and check on you in a few hours and decide if you need to go to hospital. After, sorry, it's a long story. uh, Gotta hydrate.
Right.
Um, but so after I get into the rest area, and again, this race is amazing. I can't say enough great things about this race. If you ever have an opportunity to go do this, like the Chinese people are like so nice that I come in and it's like 20 people come swarming around me, like helping me, like thinking of like fully crippled, like walking me into what I need to like they laid out a sleeping pad for me and popped up a tent and like come sleep in here. Do you need anything? Like, because
Oh
my
wow.
race is done now, basically. Um, so I lay down for 10 minutes or so, and then all of a sudden I hear my friend's voice. And I'm like, oh my God, it's my friend Dion. I gotta go help him. So I'm like, I'm out of the race. Like my race is done. So now I'm into volunteer and crewing mode. I'm like, I can help my friends now. I'm out of the race. So I instantly wake up after a 10-minute nap and I go outside and my friend's there and I'm helping him pop blisters and lube up his feet, like change his shoes. Like I offered him to take my shoes because I'm not
Oh
using
wow.
this anymore. You can have mine. And here's some food. I'm cooking food for him. And I do that for like an hour or so. And then another friend comes in and I'm helping them. And then another friend. So after like 7 hours of volunteering and just like helping all these people out, I'm like, I can finally take a deep breath without like coughing right now. So I feel a
Yeah.
lot better now. So I actually like call up my mom and I'm like, hey, mom, hear me out. Tell me if this is a really stupid idea or like, should I try this? I feel good right now. I feel like I owe it to myself to at least try to keep moving. Like my legs feel good. Everything feels good. Like I at least owe it to myself to just walk down the road a few miles and see how I feel. Don't put any
Yeah.
expectations on myself of like, man, I'm going to be back to running and try to race and try to win this thing. Like this just 100. I just feel like I owe it to myself to at least get back out there and test. Or I'm going to be, I always, here's my mindset that hopefully this could help somebody out there. But one of my biggest mindsets I tell myself during low moments is think of yourself in a week from now or 2 weeks from now. How's that person going to feel about the decisions you make
Right.
right now? If you quit right now because you're suffering and every part of your body wants you to stop right now, is that person in 2 weeks from now going to look back and like regret that decision? So I was putting
Yeah.
myself in 2 weeks from now and be like, man, yeah, I could be 2 weeks from now. I know my body's gonna be perfectly fine. My legs feel great. I'm gonna be back to running. This breathing issue might be nothing. It might have just been a weird coincidence, something I got alerted to, or that like I feel like that person 2 weeks from now be kind of regretting not giving myself another chance.
Yeah.
So with my mom's approval, I was like, all right, I'm gonna get back out there. So I went up to the medics and I'm like, I think I'm gonna try to give it another go. And they were like, everybody was so shocked because they saw how bad I was a few hours ago, like could not
Right.
breathe on my own, basically, and hooked up to oxygen. And I was wanting to go back out there. So they did some medical checks and like I could do a full deep breath without coughing. It was still a little bit, my chest hurt a little bit, but it felt pretty good. Like I felt like I was maybe 90% out. So I'm like, guys, I promise you, I'm not going to try to run. I'm just going to like casually walk the next 50K to the next rest area and then quit there if I feel bad. If I feel good, I'll see what happens from there.
Yeah.
So basically, got medical clearance and I'm leaving the same rest area 8 hours after I left there again.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I'm back there at basically a 24-hour mark in first place. And now I'm leaving there 8 hours later in like 10th place, I think. Yeah, in 31 hours, 32 hours.
Wow.
And you loaded up with a bunch of food, a bunch of my gear, and just kept walking. So then I walked and finally got to the point where the ambulance picked me up, which basically I had to repeat about 12 kilometers of trail
Oh no,
because
I was
I
wondering
had
if
to,
they might have like driven you back out to that spot and dropped you off or something, but oh no.
I think they would have if I asked, but I felt like I needed to do that of like, I didn't want any, I don't know,
Yeah.
like they helped me so much with the getting the ambulance there and the oxygen that I didn't feel like I earned the right to get
Ah,
driven
okay.
there compared to the other runners because it's like,
Yeah.
I got advantage then. If I got driven there, got oxygen, and then came all the way back and then got skipped over that mileage, I felt like that would have been too much of an advantage on my part. But
Okay.
now I had this huge disadvantage. Now I had to retrace this whole 12-kilometer section again, which is no big deal. I was walking at a very slow pace, but it still took a few hours. I finally get back to the point, and in my head, I was like, I'm just gonna walk to the next rest area. I'm not gonna think about competition. I'm not gonna think about pacing or anything. I'm just like, if I could just walk
Right.
without hyperventilating, I'll be good. And the tricky thing was this was the start of the high altitude section. So I'm leaving
Okay.
this town at like, I think it was like 6,000, 7,000 feet when I was having the breathing issues at basically the lowest point in the course. And all
Right.
of a sudden, this next 50K, I'm getting into 11,000-foot mountains. So I'm like, man, I'm
Oh
having these
man.
breathing issues at low altitude. I'm kind of scared of what's going to happen when I get into the high altitude.
Right? Seriously.
So I leave again, not racing at all, just going casual. And I pass like two of the other runners or so. But again, I'm not thinking about placing. I get to the rest area and I'm like, I don't feel sleepy. It's nighttime. This is the second night now. I don't feel sleepy. I feel like I'm gonna transition really fast and just keep moving.
So how
I'm
far
not
was
gonna
this into the race? Second night, this would have been what, like 130, 140 miles?
yes. Yeah, 130,
Okay.
140-ish. Yep.
Okay.
So I come to that rest area and again, it's like there's a bunch of racers just laying there and sleeping. And I'm like, huh, okay, but I'll just keep going. Again, I'm not racing up until that point. But once I got there and I saw all the racers kind of just like laying around and sleeping and resting, I'm like, man, I just went from 10th place to 6th place or 7th place with like feeling bad and not going fast. I'm like, okay, I can maybe get back in racing now. Now I'm kind of getting competitive, but I realized like I leave the rest area and I try to jog a little bit and I was hyperventilating again, like crazy. Like I could not breathe. I was wheezing really bad. I'm like, all right, I might not be able to run the rest of this race. I might have to walk the rest of this race. So
Wow.
the only strategy I have if I want to be competitive here is to never stop moving. Like, like,
Right. Yeah.
and I take that very literal. Like, I even walk and pee. It's crazy, but like, I don't stop moving no matter what. Except I haven't figured out number two while moving, but number
That
one,
could be a
you
little
can just
messy.
like
Yeah.
moving. So it's funny. So as soon as I get competitive again, I'm like, all right, I think this is still possible. I don't know if the course record is possible anymore, but I still think I could maybe fight back and try to win this race.
Right.
Um, so I go, and all of a sudden, my luck, all of a sudden, I go, basically, I'm on this dirt road, and I'm about to go off and start like bushwhacking through this big valley. And all of a sudden, there's this car behind me, like flying up behind me in the desert, honking and flashing its lights. And this is like 2 a.m. I'm like, what the heck is that? And I stop moving,
Yeah.
comes up, and they're like, Hunter, don't go that way. Do not go. Get in the car immediately. Like, there's wolves up there. And I'm like,
Oh,
what?
wow.
At first, my first reaction was like, oh, it's a wolf. Like that. That's cool. Like, I'd like to go see a wolf. I could fight a wolf off. But they're like, no, Hunter, it's like 13 wolves. Like,
Oh, wow.
think there. And
Like a
like,
wolf pack.
wolves, a wolf pack. Like, right up there, like a mile up the valley. You're walking right into it. They're like, Hunter, we're going to stop your watch now and hop in the car. We're going to figure out a strategy or a plan. So they drive the car, and they're like, they had fireworks in the back of the car. So they're lighting up fireworks, trying to scare off the wolves and everything. And
That's crazy.
it was insane. So they're like, there's just you and one other runner that are in this situation that are the closest to wolves. So you guys, we have to pull you off the course. And when everybody else is racing, you have to stop in place. And I'm like,
Oh my
okay,
gosh.
how's it gonna work? So they were like, all right, we're gonna drive you all the way back to the rest area that you just left a few hours ago, and let you stop there and rest until we have a plan. And they were like, we might give you time credit. And I'm like, yeah, hopefully that would kind of
Right.
suck. But I'm like, again, not super competitive at this point. I'm like, yeah, whatever. It's cool. This is a great story. So they drive me back to the rest area, and they're like, Hunter, give us a few, maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours to come up with a plan for this wolf situation. If we have to reroute the course, or we could scare off the wolf so you can keep going. Just rest here at the rest area for until we wake you up. You can go sleep. So I lay down, and within 7 minutes of like, I haven't fallen asleep yet, they're like, Hunter, all right, we got a plan. Let's go. And I'm like, I finally got comfortable. I finally allowed myself to like have the mindset of like, oh, I can actually rest a little bit in this race and like
Right.
chill out. Because again, my mindset was like, I'm never going to rest for this whole 250 miles. Never stop moving, never sleep, nothing. But now I'm like, oh yeah, well, luckily I'm on a sleeping pad. And then you're like, Hunter, we gotta go. We got a plan. We're gonna reroute you around and redo the course basically for all of the racers.
Oh
And
man.
like, no, I'm relaxed now. Give me like another 10 minutes at least. So I laid up for like 10 minutes. I didn't fall asleep, but at least I got to close my eyes and chill out. Um, they loaded me back in the car. It drove me all the way back to where they picked me up, dropped me off, and they basically had to do a reroute of the course for us
Okay.
runners. So the top few racers were already through the valley onto the main course. And everybody else, we had to run this huge loop out and around to cut off this valley where the wolves were to then
Oh
reconnect to
my
the course.
gosh.
So it's basically, I think it was about a marathon that was different
What?
of around this whole thing. It was,
That's a ton.
yeah, time wise, it was the same as the other course. I think distance, it was a little bit further from the section we skipped out on. But it was the end. It was now it's like a different element where these top 7 runners are now like already through this on like a different part of the
Right.
course. Now that they didn't have to do this big loop that we had to do, which I was fine. I'm like, I think I assumed the race director and everything. They had the map. They figured it out that it was equal. That it wasn't like we had an advantage or they had an advantage or anything. So I started running, and at this point, this is another lesson. Hopefully, somebody can learn from. And as like positive and like my mindset is basically positive 99% of the time of these big adventures, even
Right.
when the suffering gets really tough and I'm in the ambulance, I'm still like a smile on my face, like positive. But there was a tough moment after this wolf situation. I got dragged back in the course. It was super cold. It was nighttime that my head did kind of go negative where I was thinking about quitting, but I was going through my head of like the excuses of why I want to quit right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's no brainer. Like, I just say my breathing issues. Like, I ended up in an ambulance. I couldn't breathe. Like,
Right.
nobody's ever going to question that. That is a whole
Right.
valid
Seriously.
reason to quit. but I realized that's not why I wanted to quit at that moment. It was like, I was just like, I realized I just was I wasn't eating for the past 2 hours because of this whole wolf situation. So my energy, like mindset was going downhill. And I was just like getting uncomfortable. And I was like, this is not fun. Like, why am I out
Right.
here? I should be just sleeping right now and volunteering, like just chilling out. But I was like, oh, I could use the breathing issues as an excuse to quit right now. But I know everybody would accept that excuse but me. Myself in
Yeah.
2 weeks from now would be like beating myself up that like I use that as an excuse. So
Right.
after 10 minutes of this low moment, I'm like, snap out of it, Hunter, eat some food, you'll be fine. And luckily, I don't make rash decisions like that just to quit. My rule is always like, if I want to quit, I have to quit in a high moment. I have to get through this low moment and I have to be on a high to then have a
Yeah.
rational mind to be like, this is the reason why I'm quitting because of my health or because of this issue that's logical. That's the only time I give myself permission to quit, not when I'm suffering and crying and feeling like crap, because it's so easy to make that rash decision to call up, be like, oh, come pick me up. Like, I just got dropped off like 30 minutes ago. They could easily just come pick me up. But
Yeah.
luckily I didn't. I ate some food and of course I was positive again from there.
Well, how did the race directors find out about these wolves? Were like the other runners in front? Did somebody report them, or like how did they know?
No, so it was a weird gap where um the I was coming into the section and the wolves were within a mile. So I don't know exactly the distance, but pretty close. But there was a checkpoint in in between us and the wolves, basically. And the people at the checkpoint saw the wolves and they
Uh,
called it immediately. But it took a while for the communication to get to me because they had to drive out to come get me. So it was like
right.
a 30-minute time difference between when they saw the wolves and I was walking right into them. So it was like it was crazy luck that like I was just stepping off the dirt road to go bushwhack through this valley where there's no road access at all for like 20 kilometers. That like if I
Yeah.
went into that section, I would have definitely ran into the wolves. But luckily, like I was moving pretty slow that they ended up catching me right at that moment.
Gosh, that's crazy. Yeah, you have to start carrying like fireworks as part of your kit now to
Yeah,
like scare wolves off.
that's not mandatory gear for next year.
Right, I know, right? Everybody has to carry some Roman candles.
Yeah.
So you do the little, reroute and join back
Yep.
up with the course then. So after the wolf debacle, you continue on, and how's the rest of that go?
Um, it was quite interesting when we did that reroute. The race directors were pretty paranoid about the wolves, and
Mhm.
these mountains are known. There's a bunch of wolves in this area and everything. So they ended up again. There's 500 volunteers for this race and only 50 runners. So what they did was they deployed one vehicle per runner to like escort them through this reroute section through the valley to
Oh,
recap the
wow.
main course. So they had an escort driving behind us the whole time. So it's like I had these two Chinese guys. And this story is I love this story. It was one of my favorites from the race. Was these two Chinese runners, not runners, two Chinese guys, older gentlemen, like in the 60s, and they just look like rugged, like just you see them, they kind of like they look kind of mean at first. Um, but it was so interesting being with them through the night because we didn't talk because they didn't speak any English at all, and I don't speak any
Right.
Chinese. So it's like ni hao and xi, like thank you and hello. Um, and but they would like get out and like walk a section with me for like 5 minutes or something. The guy would get out and walk with me, and he's like smoking cigarettes. And the whole time, just never been a, like nonstop. Um, and again, we didn't talk at all, but they were always right there for like 12 hours. They were driving behind me, just walking.
Wow.
And it was funny because I said our team name was Team Bad Lungs because like wasn't breathing at all because of asthma or whatever was going on, but they were smoking like 3 packs of cigarettes while following me the whole time. So they had just like smoke boxing the whole time.
Oh,
Um,
man.
and I started employing this strategy that actually Taylor taught me the week prior, basically on the Appalachian Trail. was a minute 30 power naps. I
Right. Yep.
I I saw her doing it on the Appalachian Trail, and I was like, that doesn't really work that much. Like I'm from a bench racing background, like 20-minute power naps work, but a minute 30 now. But I'm like, I'm gonna give it a shot. So I would like be walking in the middle of the road and all of a sudden just like flop down and like pass out for a minute 30. And these guys behind me like freak out, think I'm like I passed out or something. They would hop down and like at first they're like, are you okay? Like not say okay, but they were like checking on me, like,
Right.
oh I'm sleeping. Um so I would like do this minute 30 power naps. I would just lay down, time a minute 30, and then pop right back up and keep going again. I'm telling you, a minute 30 power nap, it feels like forever. Like you lay
Wow.
down. I was just talking to Tara like the other day about this of like you feel like you're down forever. You lay down, you set that minute 30, and I had like every single time like, man, my alarm hasn't gone off yet. I would like check my alarm and be like, it still hasn't gone off yet? Because you just close your eyes and you kind of pass out instantly, and then you pop right back up and you have like energy for at least an hour to two, and then I would do another minute 30 pound nap. I would just repeat that all through the night. And again, this is the second night, basically no
Yeah.
sleep. I had that the kind of restless like 10 minutes at when I dropped out of the race. Um, and that kind of fueled me all the way until the sun rose. And it was really cool because, again, these two Chinese guys in the car, we didn't talk at all, but they would like start getting excited for me towards the end. They would like cheer me on and clapping. And as the sun rose, I'm like dancing and super happy. And they would drive the car up ahead of me and get out and start dancing with me and everything. It was like really cool experience. And now we're up in the high mountains. We're at the highest point. I think it was like 11,500 feet or so. And we get to the rest area, and I had to say goodbye to my two Chinese drivers. Um, that was cool. And I come in, and now I'm finally in like race mode. I'm like, I made it through the second night. I feel really good. Like
Yeah.
body wise, I didn't feel that sleepy that night. Like I haven't been taking too much caffeine. I kind of like slowly progressed my caffeine strategy over these longer races. So like the first night I didn't do any caffeine. The second night I'm only doing like 100 milligrams every 6 hours. And then like my plan was to slowly amp it up the third night and possibly the fourth night do a lot more caffeine. Um, I come in the rest area and I did that section so slow. Like it was pavement and I did not run at all. And
Wow.
I got passed by Nikki, who was the top female, and she was sprinting on that road. So I'm like, she's way ahead of me. Like, so I come to the rest area and they're like, no, she only left like 5 minutes ago. I'm like, what the heck? So like my strategy
Wow.
is like just nonstop, just moving, never stop at a checkpoint to fill up, like do anything, never stop to blisters, just keep moving and doing these
Yeah.
minute 30 power naps. It allowed me to stay pace with the top runners. So
Wow.
I leave that rest area and I'm like, I feel good. Like I feel like my breathing's finally better again. So I start running and I'm like, it lasted maybe 10 minutes of me running, being like, man, I'm not sleepy right now. My legs feel good. Breathing feels good. I can run now. Oh, this is going to be exciting. I can catch these people. And I looked at my placement. I was sitting in, I think, sixth place at this time,
Oh,
and
wow.
the gap wasn't huge. It was only again when I restart the race, I was 8 hours behind, and now I was being told by the aid station people that the first place guy was like 6 hours ahead. So I'm like,
Okay.
how did I close 2 hours while feeling like crap, not moving, not running, but I just
Right.
never stopped and slept. That was the difference. The
Yeah.
other runners were sleeping like an hour, 2 hours a night to then push faster. So I was getting a little competitive. I'm like, this is possible. But 10 minutes of running and I start hyperventilating again. And I'm forced to basically stop and actually sit down and like
Oh,
catch my
man.
breath. I'm like, oh gosh, I
You're like, not again.
not again, not again. And I'm like on the borderline of like getting that, like, I had the same feeling I had a day ago where I had get the ambulance call for me. So I'm like, oh
Yeah.
gosh, this is happening again. But this time I'm in the middle of nowhere. There's no road access. Like they can't just send an ambulance to come get me. So I'm like, I guess I just got to keep moving. So I keep walking. It's like freezing cold at this point. It was like the coldest point in the race. Um, and yeah, I just keep going at a casual pace. And all of a sudden, like this runner comes up from behind me, Benny, who was the guy that was in third place the first night. And then
Yeah.
I've been told, like in my head, he was like second place the whole race, and all of a sudden he's coming behind me. Like, what's going on? And then another runner comes up behind me. I'm like, where these guys were supposed to be ahead of me. So I thought I was sitting in sixth place, but I was actually sitting in like fourth place. I'm like, what's going on? And what
Yeah.
happened to them was during the whole wolf situation, they got like super hypothermic and they had to like stop at the rest area and sleep. And
Oh
like
no.
I thought they quit the race basically. And they were like, we're done racing. It's too tough, whatever. And they stopped racing. So I guess that rest area I came into, again, my strategy was to never stop moving. So I never even like came into the main area, the rest area. I would just like grab my drop bag and leave. And they were sleeping in there. I didn't even know that. So I passed like three people in the rest area without even realizing
Nice.
it. So now I'm like, okay, I can still be competitive here and keep racing, even though everything is falling apart.
Gosh. So how far at this point are you from the finish?
Um, yeah, a lot happened there. I think we're about 180 miles in, I believe, at this point.
Okay. So that would be about 70 miles to the finish, roughly.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So how did that final 70 miles go? Did you have any like crazy more wolf attacks or anything?
Oh gosh, let's think. I had camels. I had a lot of camels. It was right
Okay.
after those two runners passed me, and they're like they're going so fast. Like the dude's running like again an 8 minute pace. Like I'm like, dude, props to him for running that
Yeah.
fast. But also in the back of my head, I'm like, I'm walking at like an 18-minute pace, and I'm still keeping the same overall time as these runners here that are running so much faster than me. Like that gave me a little confidence. I'm like, maybe the
Yeah.
strategy does work. Like
Seriously.
maybe I need to start using the strategy in other races that I can maybe go a little faster. But so yeah, I start going, and I can't tell you how beautiful. Like the Gobi Desert in China was gorgeous. I wish I always I always stay present and I look around and like appreciate everything. But since I was struggling so much and I was focused so much on my breathing that like I didn't get to like stop and like look around and like appreciate it as much as possible up
Yeah.
until this point. Like I finally realized like, man, I'm just walking past all these beautiful views and not like appreciating them. So I finally just like, all right, stop racing so much, Hunter. Stop being so competitive and just like chill out and enjoy the views. But it was basically for 2 full days, I was breathing through a straw. That's how my breathing felt. Like, that's the
Wow.
best way to explain it. Not like a big straw like this guy, like, it was like a regular, like, McDonald's straw. And then sometimes, like, when
Right.
I had those asthma issues, it was like a little coffee stirring straw, like those little,
Oh my goodness.
the bartender, like, straws.
Right.
It was one of the craziest experiences ever, and definitely a top 3 toughest things I've ever had to push through of, like, not being able to take a deep breath for 2 full days nonstop is just, like,
Yeah, that's nuts.
insane to me,
Yeah,
and, like,
seriously. It's just nuts.
any slight uphill, I would be hyperventilating. Like, I would have to take a few steps and then stop moving and keep going. Like, I kept going through my head of, like, is this all in my head? Am I working myself up? Like, is this just mentally like something going on? Or is this truly
Yeah.
like something breathing? And like I did a lot of reflecting on that. And I know with 100% certainty it wasn't just in my head. Like this was something
Yeah.
was going on, but I didn't feel like I was at the point where like I needed to quit. Like I was forced to quit. Like this was not an enjoyable experience. Like for most people, like nobody would be smiling right now, but I'm still smiling out here, even though I'm like hyperventilating. But I didn't feel like I was for it. Like I was in a position that I had to stop moving because
Yeah.
I was playing very conservative. I was not running. I was just walking at a super slow pace and just trying to stay present. That the breathing was that bad.
Yeah. And then so then you push through the rest of that to the end. Were you able to run at all of that last, like, 70 miles, or were you still walking pretty much the whole way in?
I would do like little jogs like for 10 seconds just to see how it would feel. And it would
Yeah.
just be no, just bad thing. And like it just wasn't worth it at the point because I would run a little
Right.
bit and then hyperventilate and have to like stop moving or go super slow to catch my breath.
Yeah.
Like okay, Hunter, just get in hiking mode. Just like you're never going to stop moving. You're just going to keep walking. And again, that's where like I think a big tactic that I hope some people can pick up is like when you have a plan going into a race, that's great. But like when things go wrong and shit hits the fan, like have a way to adapt and change your strategy.
Yeah.
Again, my strategy coming into this was just take the first 100 super easy and then slow down the hammer and push super hard the second half with no sleep and like really just crush it. But that track
Right.
was not possible anymore. So I had to like, if I want to be competitive here or even just finish this race, I had to come up with a whole new strategy. So my strategy was like, all right, Hunter, if you want to be competitive, you cannot stop moving. If
Yeah.
like you want to finish this race, you can't sleep really because like you don't have that much time. So again, my strategy was like, I originally I was like, I'm going to sleep maybe 20, 30 minutes the last night to give me energy. But now I don't have that as an option if I want to be competitive. But again, I was given that confidence of like, I'm slowly catching these leaders without running. But now we're going into the third night. And the furthest I've ever gone with no sleep up to this point was like 58 hours, 60 hours or so.
Wow.
And that I'm based, I'm over 60 hours in right now with no sleep.
Right.
And now with this breathing issues, I'm going into a third night. Is this even possible to go this far without sleep? Like there was a lot of uncertainty there, but I had the confidence and like the strategies and the experience I've had. I've done. I did the math was I've done 58 24-hour plus races before. So
Okay.
like
Wow.
yeah, so the sleep deprivation I'm used to ever since I was like 10 years old. I've been sleep deprived, which that's not something to brag about. Or that's yep. I had the experience, but
Right.
never this far, never this long in this environment. Um, but so up to that point, I'm like, okay, hey, I can maybe catch these leaders if I keep going. And I slowly just start picking off these runners, even the guys that are blown past me running 8-minute pace. I'm slowly catching them over the next 12 hours. And all of a sudden, I see myself in fourth place going in like the basically, this is the third night now. And for some reason, that third night, I never got sleepy for even a single minute. And I'm like,
That's
what is
crazy.
going on in my body? Like everything's out
Right.
of work right now. Like my breathing's off in a bad way. There's a lot of positives here, but like I was so focused on the positives. Again, I think another tactic that like hopefully somebody can learn from is like when you're in these low moments, it's very easy to focus on what's going wrong. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, my Achilles hurts so bad. It's
Yes.
but like my mindset always goes to think about what's going right for you, not just what's going wrong. Yes, you need to address the issue of like, I need to address that I can't breathe right now. But I also look at all the things that are going right for me right now. Like my legs feel completely fresh at mile 200. That's like unheard of. Like what's going on? Like
Right.
they feel great. I only have like 3 blisters that don't bother me. My stomach hasn't gone south a single time. And then now like I'm basically 75 hours in with almost no sleep and I'm not getting sleepy at all. And like my energy is great. Like what's going
That's
on?
insane.
So
Right.
there's like positives going on. And I'm slowly finding my way back, catching up with these leaders. Like my gaps close from 8 hours to 6 hours to 4 hours. Like this is possible. I'm sitting in fourth place, getting excited. Like it's only like 50 miles left. I can maybe start running again. Um, famous last words. Because
Nope.
yeah, as I got to the second to last rest area, all of a sudden, like my breathing just went to crap, like out of nowhere. Like it's been basically I've been breathing through a straw for the past 2 days, but all of a sudden now that straw like disappeared, and I'm like
Oh, wow.
breathing through like I'm barely breathing, going like 1 kilometer per hour. Any deep breath, I would be like coughing up really bad. I'm like,
Oh,
what's going on? I call the race director just to be like, hey, I'm coming into the rest area here. I could see it. And the crazy thing about this desert is like there's basically straight line for like a marathon, basically.
right.
And you could see the rest area, but it takes you like an hour to 2 hours to get there. So I'm like, I see the rest area. I'm about 3 kilometers out. But I cannot breathe at all right now. I'll be fine. Don't freak out. I'm gonna get to the rest area, but just to see it. Is there doctors there? Is there an ambulance or is there like oxygen there just to, if something is seriously going wrong, at least something be prepared. And I call them, they're like, yes, it's all there. Hang up. And I'm walking at like 1 kilometer per hour, even less than that. And this is way worse than I even had the first day, basically,
Wow.
where I cannot breathe. I'm like hyperventilating, coughing. And again, I can't say enough great things about this race and the Chinese people. But like all of a sudden, there's like 10 people come running from the aid station out into the desert to come me and wank me into the rest area. And it's all on video too. I'm just walking so slow, but I'm like, you could see me in the video, like huffing and puffing and wheezing, like I'm sprinting
Yeah.
full max heart rate, and everything. Like it was going crazy. So I get to the rest area and everybody's like freaking out, and like this doctor's coming up to me and hooking me up to oxygen. I lay down and they do all these vital scans. They get a EKG. They hook me up and check my heart, and like they were doing everything to test everything. And everything came back fine. It was really weird. Like my heart was super healthy. My oxygen level was low, but it wasn't super low. And
That's so bizarre.
heart rate was good, blood pressure was good. The only thing that came back finally was I've had a fever. I'm like, what's going on here?
Huh.
So I lay there. The race director ends up coming to this rest area to check on me because we've been talking on the phone the whole race, whatever. And she's been freaking out. She's like, I just need to see you. And they were like, you can continue racing if you want, but we wouldn't recommend it. Let's just take the time here or just rest and just chill out. Like don't race right now. Because again, my mindset is like I have not stopped moving for 78 hours basically. I've been basically just constantly going through these rest areas, spending 3 minutes to 5 minutes, whatever, and getting in and out, not
Right.
sleeping or anything. So now they're like, how to just rest. And I laid there and I slept for an hour, woke up, my breathing felt a little better, and I just sat in oxygen for like 5 hours, I think. And now
Oh wow.
finally all the runners are coming in. Like the fifth place person caught up with me. She transitioned really fast and she took off. And then another guy came in, like all these people started coming in. But I was like, I owe it to the race director and my body to not be racing right now. Don't be competitive, Hunter. Like, yes, you're catching up. You could maybe catch up to the podium.
Yeah.
You could maybe finish top five. Like, but that's what you've been pushing yourself for the past 3 days to try to do that. Just chill out, Hunter. Like, just stop racing. So I just laid
Right.
there and I was just like super casual and just like took the oxygen. And then they're like, Hunter, you can make a decision if you want to keep racing or not. And I was like, I feel like I can walk it in. I feel like I can walk the last 40 miles here and just finish it. Like, I'm not going to run anymore. I'm not going to race anymore. I don't care about placement. I don't care about time. I don't care about any of that. I want to finish this race. I've gone this far
Right.
with struggles. Like, now I'm finally at a
You want to
point of
get
just like, yeah, I'm just
you want to
happy to
get the other
finish
half
it.
of that buckle.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was such an interesting shift because so I left that rest area 5, 6 hours later, whatever, after doing all the oxygen and getting the vitals and medical check and everything. And it was a really unique experience because I've had the mindset for the past few years of like, I don't want to just finish a race anymore. Like finishing a race doesn't fill me up anymore. Like I want to push my body and like really try to see how well I could do. And that's not so much about like winning a race. Like that doesn't drive me. Like being on top of a podium doesn't motivate me. It's like more about pushing my body to its limits and seeing
Your
what I'm
personal
capable.
best.
Exactly. But now I'm continuing this race. I'm like, I'm not going to push my body anymore. I'm like, I know I could maybe walk a little faster here and be right on the edge again of like hyperventilating and passing out. But like, that's
Yeah.
not what I'm searching for anymore. So I finally got to the point where I'm like, I kind of went back to my younger self of where I was perfectly content just like finishing these tough races. And that was like all I needed. Where now I'm like, if I can just finish this race, I'll be super like I'm perfectly content. I'm honestly perfectly content if I drop out now. Like I've
Yeah.
done enough up to this point. Like I don't need that medal. I don't need to come across the finish line. But I felt like at that point I was like finally at the I feel like a kid again of like I'll be just so happy to finish that race. And that's enough to fill me up. I don't care about my placement. I don't care if I finish fifth place or sixth place or 20th place. So I stopped being
Right.
competitive. And all of a sudden I'm like just walking very casually. I would stop in the middle of the desert and just like just sit there for 30 minutes, not because I needed a break or because I needed to eat something, or I'm like, I'm just gonna sit here and look around and like enjoy the views. And there's like a big group of wild camels just come up to me and start like walking with me. And, like it was just such a cool experience where like people would pass me and there would be that second of my brain be a little competitive of like, I can't let him pass me because now I'm not going to be in the top 5 anymore. And my
Yeah.
Instagram posts would look different because I say I got top 5 at this race compared to I got
Right.
6th place. So it's like those thoughts come through my head and I had to like shut it down instantly. And then it was like for that last 50 miles, I just went super casual and I didn't even come to the rest area, the last rest area. I wasn't sleepy at all. I wasn't tired. Like my legs felt fine, my breathing is fine, but I'm like, I don't want to race, man. I'm just gonna casually, I'm gonna just sit in here for 4 hours and just like take a nap. And don't really care about placement. Like just enjoy, just sit there, just enjoy the experience. And all these people ran past me, and I ended up finishing 11th place. But I'm so happy I finished 11th place instead of 10th place because I would have been fixated on that 10th place. Like I would tell
Yeah.
people in stories like this, oh, I finished top 10 at the Ultra Gobi. But because I finished 11th place, like I'm so happy I did that because I'll remember this experience from all the lessons and all the struggles that I pushed through
Yeah.
and the people I met more than just, oh, I won this race or I got top 5 or I got top 10. Like I'm very happy with my experience in the finish and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like more so than, like you said, getting top 10 or top 5, you gained a lot of personal growth. Like you said, kind of going back to being that child again, just happy to be out there racing and just having fun. And maybe you weren't having a lot of fun at times because you were suffering for sure, but you got that experience and you got to finish and not focus on like the race aspect of it. And
Exactly.
so a lot of personal growth, it sounds like, which is, I mean, shoot, that's probably better than the medal.
So much fun. Like, and that's why I do these big adventures. It's not for the records, not for the placement, not for the pictures or the pat on my back.
Right.
It's truly to push me outside my comfort zone to grow as an athlete, but more importantly, to grow as a person through the
Yeah.
struggles and being uncomfortable. And this race taught me so much about myself and pushed me past my limits of like breathing issue. I would say it's the second worst thing I've ever had to push through, behind pushing through a concussion, which you should never
Yeah.
push through a concussion. I learned that like the hard way. Like that is the stupidest thing to
Right.
push
Yeah.
through. But like this breathing issue, that was probably the toughest thing I've ever had to push through. And I still figured out how to finish and still take care of my body and not neglect it. And like some people listening to this might be like, Hunter doesn't care about his body, and that's just so stupid for him to push through something like that. But I was doing this all within my limits of the sense of like I
Yeah.
I wasn't fixated like I have to finish this race no matter what. Quitting is not an option. Like that's kind of like the David Goggins mindset. At least like people take it
Yeah.
that way. I don't know if it's
Right.
fully that belief, but like that mindset almost ended my career like 3 years ago when I had a big bad concussion in a race, and I had that mindset. I could not quit no matter what. Just dig deep, push through the no matter what. And yeah, that ended pretty badly. And it took like a year for me to recover from that issue. So I have that mindset of like, yeah, I pushed through 99% of things that most people would quit in a race don't bother me at all. And I never quit. But when my life is on the line or I'm going to cause permanent damage, I am going to quit a race.
Yeah.
And I never felt like at that point of this race, like I was at that point of like, yeah, it's just breathing so bad. Like I'm breathing through a shawl, but it felt controlled most of the time
Yeah.
that I didn't feel like I needed to quit.
So when you got back to the States, did you like go to your doctor and try to figure out what the heck happened? Like, have you figured anything out? I mean, obviously you're
Yeah,
still
so
coughing.
yeah, I know. So that's the thing. It was like I had some people tell me, "Oh, it's because it's the desert and like dry air and it's like the breathing issues." But I'm like, everybody should have been dealing with this then. Nobody else had
And
this
you've been
bad
in
of
dry air
issue.
before too, in like
Yeah, it
Colorado
was.
or other areas.
And then people tell me it's because of altitude, like 11,000 feet. But I'm like, last summer I climbed Denali, which is way taller, and I climbed all 50 state summits and everything. Like yeah, I had no breathing issues on that. So it was like, hey, I don't think it's altitude. I don't think it's a dryness. I haven't had asthma issues for the past so many years of like this
Yeah.
asthma attack that like the only explanation was some sort of sickness, uh, COVID or something like that. I didn't want to see that when I was in the country
Right.
because
Sure.
that could bring a lot. it was some sickness. But I did a COVID test and nothing came back. But now that I've been home, I've been like coughing up a bunch of mucus and like yeah, coughing up a bunch of stuff, and then my breathing gets better the more I cough up mucus.
Huh.
So like I'm I felt good the past like 3 days or so, and now I got sick kind of again. So I'm going to the doctors tomorrow to figure out what's wrong. But I'm thinking it's more towards some sort of sickness I picked up before the race or during the race,
Yeah.
on top of maybe some asthma issues of I already have the low oxygen like breathing. Um, so it was maybe a combination of that and the dry air that I was just inhaling a bunch of dust. I don't know, but it was kind of a mystery. And
Yeah.
still dealing with a little bit of it now. So
Yeah.
not
Well,
rushing back to running.
yeah. Well, yeah. It almost sounds like a pneumonia or some sort of like bronchial infection
Yeah,
or something. That's crazy, So, well, hopefully that clears up, and you figure out what it is. Can get a treatment plan if you need it and get it all taken care of. Because I know you do have another race coming up. I think is it December, the Conquer, the race you guys put on.
yeah. My friend was kind of giving me crap the other day about I don't really have an off season. I thought I had an off season, but it's been basically constantly nonstop. And so in December, I'm doing the Conquer Backyard Ultra. It's the toughest
Right.
Backyard Ultra there is. And last year it was super tough, but the course was 3.4 miles and with like 1,000 feet of gain on some really gnarly trails down here in
And
the
crazy
Depton.
cold.
And it was crazy cold. It was got down like 6 degrees.
Yeah.
It was everybody was freezing. So it was such a tough course last year, but this year it's going to be 20 times harder because now it's a true backyard ultra distance. So now it's instead of
4.1. Yeah.
instead of 3.4 miles, it's 4.1. And I just did a test loop of it yesterday. And yes, I was a little sick, but it took me exactly an hour and I wasn't going slow. Like I was running all the downhills, all the flats, all the uphills. I'm power hiking really aggressive. And I came in right at an hour. And so I'm really excited to see that race of like how that plays out. I don't think it's going to be super conducive to me of like a sufferfest and like grinding out for days on end. I think the limit is going to be 24 hours. If people can go 24 hours in that course, that's gonna be really impressive. Where last year
What's
went like 42 hours, I think.
Wow. Yeah. So what's the elevation gain on the new loop? At least according to your run yesterday.
Yeah, it's like almost 1,300 feet a game per loop.
Dang.
Yeah, which the back
Dang.
is usually completely flat.
Yeah, or maybe like 300-400. Some of them are out there like that. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's wow, that's ridiculous. Yeah, that
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how many runners make it past, or if anyone makes it past 24 hours.
yeah. I'm excited to see,
Yeah.
and I gotta kind of change my strategy this next month here to train for like. So you got to be a fitter athlete. You can't just be like I don't consider myself a super fast runner. I consider myself like I could suffer better than almost anybody else. So this
Yeah.
race, it's like, all right, now I got to go fast, but it's nice because it's good training for my next race, which is I'm doing the Hurt 100 in January, and then it leads
Yeah.
to hopefully Barkley, and then the Triple Crown of 200s next year. So got a
Yep.
pretty packed
Yeah.
schedule that you got to recover from this race and start training again.
Yeah, definitely doesn't sound like there's much of an off season. But hey,
Yeah,
that'll be fun to follow and see how things go.
yeah, I haven't had an off season in 16 years of doing this. It's
Well,
just constantly doing adventures.
it's worked out okay for you so far, so,
Yeah,
we'll see, but man, I appreciate you coming back on again for this, 7th time, hearing all about these crazy wolf stories and everything. I saw you post on Instagram about that, and I was like, "Oh, that's nuts, like, he's gotta come back on. We
yeah,
gotta talk."
I love it.
But,
Oh,
yeah, I'm sure you'll be on at some point for your 8th, it sounds like, with all these crazy things coming up, but always a good time chatting with you, Hunter. I really do appreciate it, man. I hope your, lungs clear up and you get feeling better, man.
thanks, Stephen. Always a pleasure, and hopefully the audience learned at least one lesson from my stupidity, or we're my mistakes for a little bit at least.
There's definitely some nuggets in there, man.
Okay, sweet. See you guys.
All right, see ya. If you enjoyed this episode of The Adventure Jogger, please consider joining our Patreon and be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok for more content like this. Without your continued support, we would not be able to produce this type of content. So thank you so much to everyone that has listened, followed along, subscribed, liked, commented, you name it, donated on Patreon. Thank you.